I'm Rob Marbury, the Marketing Director for Iron Forums, and I'm really excited to be bringing this content session about sales to you. I've got two awesome members you're going to hear from. Steve Landrum, who's a member of Iron Forums Cobb and has 30 plus years of sales experience and leadership. His company is Etowah Sales Solutions, and he's really focused on our sweet spot of small to medium-sized businesses, helping them take sales to the next level. Steve is a Sales Xceleration Certified Advisor, as is Greg Harper, who is a member of North Gwinnett. They work together often, and Greg has helped a lot of Iron Forums members scale their sales, their teams, make them more efficient, and really creates clarity around future revenue potential and strategies looking at different metrics that he can affect. Greg's company is Lakeshore Sales Advisors, and I'm really excited to get the two of them together in a conversation about sales that I think you will find interesting and fascinating and will be helpful to your business. Let's see what they have to say.
Welcome, Iron Forums Nation. So, hi friend. So tell me what a typical client looks like that may need our sales services.
So primarily they're privately owned businesses with $2 to $20 million in sales. They may be struggling with declining or stagnant sales. A lot of times the founder, the CEO, is also the sales leader and either is not very good at it or doesn't like doing it. I see a lot of companies right now that are planning to sell their business in 3 to 5 years, and they really want to put in a more robust sales organization so they can ramp the value up.
So tell me, why does fractional sales leadership, we always think of a sales leader being full-time, so why does fractional sales leadership make sense to a business owner?
You know, it's very similar to like any fractional C-suite job where I know you've all heard of fractional CFOs, fractional COOs. Well, fractional VP of sales works the same way, where a small business that may not be ready to employ his own full-time sales VP needs someone with experience that can come in and help him build his business. And that's what we do is fractional. It could be on a fractional basis. It's much more cost effective, but he also gets more experience for the same amount of money.
I can tell you, Greg, one of the things that's always missing is a robust sales process. That's always missing with small businesses. And when I say sales process, I mean something that's really defined around the business. So in other words, measurable steps that define that person's business and how they're going to conduct and go out to market. The reason that's important to not only define but also to have a written plan is that if a sales guy knows what the objectives are at each sales step, we can put lots of information in at each sales step that we can measure. And we do that, and it gives the business owner predictability, and it gives him a forecast model at each of the sales steps to know how his business is progressing. That's one of the main things that I see that's missing a lot in business.
So we all are familiar with processes where it comes to maybe financial or more than anything operational. So what benefits can a good sales process offer for a small business? Let's say if a guy has 2 salespeople, 3 salespeople. Is a process that important for that small of a business?
Absolutely. And salespeople tend to try to do things on their own. Everybody's got a different approach on how they sell. So a common sales process that's defined by the business owner and for what we do allows repeatability in each of the sales guys' efforts. Sales guys sometimes will leave a company, so a common sales process also gives you something that the next sales guy can plug immediately into and allows him to also be doing exactly the same thing that the other salespeople are doing.
Yeah, that brings up a kind of a good memory, kind of a bad memory, but I worked for a company that was a small business, and although the revenue was great, it seemed like every order was kind of a fire drill. So is that indicative of a company that does not have a good sales process?
Oh, you make a great point, because if a sales process is in place that's defined like that and measurable, it brings value to the business owner. I mean, one day all businesses are going to sell one day for something, If that's in place, it's automatic increased value to the business. So Greg, what are some of the common issues that you see businesses facing?
Say one of the largest things I see right now is, since a business owner is so busy with wearing so many hats, that they seem to be always worried about accountability. Like, they want to know that their sales guys are actually working the hours they expect them to do, and that they're doing all the steps in that. That's one of the biggest issues I see right now.
So why do you think it's such a hard concept for business owners to get accountability for some of the tools that we use?
So I'm an older guy. I was got into sales long before CRMs. And I used to think about what I had to do to make sure that I'm holding my sales teams accountable. And it was weekly reports that I just had to beat it out of them. It was weekly meetings. It was spending a lot of time on the road with the sales guys. But there's a lot of new technologies, mainly CRMs right now. And a lot of small businesses don't use a CRM. And the reason is, I think they're just afraid of new technology putting another software in. But a CRM allows, especially when you create the processes that you were talking about, it allows that business owner to be able to look at a daily dashboard, and he knows exactly what his sales guys are doing. He can measure them against key performance indicators. When you first think about CRMs, you think of the big one, Salesforce. And Salesforce is used by a lot of large companies, and they're extremely complex. But there's a lot of smaller CRMs that are great for small businesses. One of the other areas that I see a lot is pertaining to compensation. So right now, with the workforce the way it is, it's hard to get the right people. Business owners don't always compensate or have the right commission plan. Are you seeing similar things?
Absolutely. Matter of fact, I think with all my engagements and all the times that I've called on small businesses in my career, I think compensation is the one that is messed up the most. And let me tell you why. Many times compensation is just overlooked, but compensation should be one of the main motivators for a salesperson. It's one of the main motivators. And I know you see this as well, Greg, but I see so many times a business owner has a sales guy on take for instance, a high base salary. So his overall compensation is mostly from a base salary, and his commissions as part of the structured compensation is very low. All that does is you're teaching the sales guy to be lazy. He's not motivated to go out and do anything to earn extra money. You're giving it to him already without any kind of measurable action. On the flip side of that, let me just paint that picture for you. On the flip side of that, if a business owner is an all commission guy, he's got to go out and earn all of it on his own. You've seen these times, or maybe just a little base salary, whatever that looks like. Well, I mean, as you well know, our economy changes. Economic times are good and bad, as you work through business. So if bad times happen and your salespeople are on a really low base, then he's just going to walk out the door. He's got to feed his family, and all you're doing is creating a revolving door for your business when that occurs.
Do you see one compensation package that's better for all businesses, or are they kind of customizable? And if so, what do you think is the right mix between, let's say, base and a commission plan?
Yeah, I think compensation is important. You got to know your market and you got to know your industry as far as what compensation to offer to a salesperson. However, the mix of compensation that you offer to a salesperson should be a fairly used rule of thumb, and that is about 50-50. So whatever your overall target earnings are for that salesman to make, about half should come from the base and half should come from some type of performance based on commission. The reason that's important is enough of a base gives the sales guy confidence that when things happen, maybe a turn in the economy, he can muscle through that and stay aboard. But at the same time, knowing that 50% of his overall target earnings are going to come from performance, he's got to get out of bed in the morning and he's got to go make it happen. So that's why that combo I see, at least in my career, it tends to be the best fit.
Yeah, I see a lot of small companies also that don't tie a commission plan to their overall business goals. And I think more of them are creating a compensation package to be able to either keep the employee hired or to retain him, but the commission plan, the whole total compensation, doesn't tie back at all.
I had a client that actually had 4 salespeople when I was hired to come on board as the fractional sales leader, and I was hired to revamp the whole sales structure of the business. But 4 salespeople were already engaged in the market. So one thing that I didn't understand or didn't hear before I signed was what their compensation really was. How are they compensated for their performance? And lo and behold, once I got into the engagement, all 4 salespeople had different compensation plans. And one thing that the chief operating officer told me over and over and over and over was, we've got a revolving door with salespeople. Well, as you well know, salespeople talk, right? So over chicken wings at the end of the day, you better believe they're comparing notes as to what each other makes and how each other pay compensation and structure are. So all it did was create mistrust with the business owner. The business owner thought he was doing a good thing. It's not that he was trying to do a bad thing, but the business owner thought he was doing a good thing, trying to tailor a compensation plan based on a personality rather than his business goals and the overall plan.
So it didn't tie it all back to the bottom line.
That's right. That's right.
So Steve, when you're meeting a new prospect, a new business owner, what are some of the things you're listening for that allows you better understanding whether you can help them or not? Because I know you very well. If you can't impact a business, you don't want to get involved. But what are the things that you're listening for?
Yeah, it's a great question, Greg, and it's kind of our sales radar, right? And these are red flags that I honestly listen for and hear a great deal. One of which is my sales have been flat over several years, and that's a big red flag. That usually tells me that all of these things that we're talking about, a sales process or compensation or structured goals or all of these things that really drive a business are not in place. It could be the product and services. That's always a piece of the puzzle in sales, in a market. But if the product and service is good and he's still saying that my sales are flat, it's an indication, it's a big indication of something being wrong in the business. And it's usually, you can be traced back to the sales side.
Okay, great.
Another one, if I may, I'll mention another one. This is very common, and that is when the business owner says, "I've grown my business." He might have been in business for 5 years or 10 years. Most of my business comes from referrals. That's a common statement that I hear from business owners. Now let me just say, referrals are great. And I am not an anti-referral guy. When I hear that all of my new business comes from referrals, that usually tells me that there's not a proactive sales process. In other words, we're not going to market with our products and services through a sales force or through a process or through a goal system or measurable goals. Nothing wrong with referrals. I'm a big believer in referrals. I get business through referrals. We all do. And that's why it's important to develop relationships. But when all of the business comes from referrals, it's a big red flag. There's no proactive sales process. So Greg, how about you? What do you typically hear?
So one of the things that I hear, and it goes back to your point on referrals, if you think about most people that start a business, they don't start it because they were a great salesperson. They start it because they were good in their vocation, whether it's IT, software, manufacturing, whatever. And they're known in the industry for that. So going back to the referral thing, I hear a lot. The owner goes, "I sell more than my entire sales team," which is a really scary thing because he's still trying to wear all the other hats, but he's counting on all the revenue coming from him. I also hear a lot that business owners are having trouble finding good people. It's a tough market right now. And sales is one of those things where if you are interviewing someone and they have any kind of sales ability whatsoever, they're going to sell you that they're the right guy. And the other things I'm hearing we talked about sales accountability. They're uncomfortable with some of their activities. So those are just a few of the things.
Yeah, I think so many times a business owner, to your point about salespeople, hard to find salespeople, is they tend to plug anybody in. They have a soft spot because there's a longtime employee that's got a relative that needs a job, and let's try him out. I hear that a lot. Let's try him at sales. Well, you don't have to try. You got to know what a person's made of in their brain if they're made for sales, and those assessments are great tools.
Yeah, have you had any clients that have a 20-year employee? They've had him since the beginning, but he's just not able to bring the sales that he used to. It's hard for them to get rid of those guys.
That's right.
But a lot of our EOS guys talk about the right people in the right seats. That doesn't mean that an owner has to get rid of that 20-year employee, but is there some transition plan for him? As long as it's not the automatic, what I see a lot of companies do, he's a good sales guy, let's make him the sales manager now. Because that, to me, is a big red flag. It can, a lot of times it can work out, that the guy can be a great sales leader, but more times than not, that's not the case. Great conversation, but share some of the things, some of your favorite lessons about sales.
As you and I have been experienced salespeople, I'll use experience rather than older
Thank you.
salespeople. We've seen a lot of changes in business, and one thing that has obviously become very prevalent is automation. Automation in all your processes of your business, including sales, as you indicated earlier about automated CRM process that measures our business. Saying that, when an engineer, like a business owner who's an engineer or a technical type, implements automation in their sales process, they tend to go overboard with it. So in other words, they tend to make the sales guy a data entry guy rather than a sales guy for what they hired him for. I see that often. So again, as we've talked about, salespeople are different. They're wired different. They're driven. They need accolade. They need motivation. And all those things are important in driving in sales and sales performance in a salesperson. So if you've got too much accountability and you got too many things that the sales guy's got to do as far as data, you're just going to burn the guy out. Automation is a good thing. It's a good thing, but you got to allow your sales guy still room to go and do what you hired him to do, and that is go sell and use his skills to do that.
Yeah, that's great advice. I agree with that.
Yeah. So Greg, we're both Christians and love being a part of Iron Forums. Share your favorite or a favorite scripture verse related to business.
Yeah, I think, Steve, one of the best verse for me is, I'm fairly new in the business world, owning my own business. I worked for somebody for a long time. I've always trusted in God for my salvation and for a lot of other things, but for some reason I was missing the connection of trust Him in my business. And during some difficult times, I found Jeremiah 17, verse 7 through 9. And it is, "But blessed is the one who trusts in the Lord, whose confidence is in Him. They will be like a tree planted by the water that sends out its roots by the stream. It does not fear when heat comes. Its leaves are always green. It has no worries in the year of a drought and always bears fruit." Now, that's really important, but the next one is the one that really impacted me more than anything. "The heart is deceitful above all things and beyond cure. Who can understand it?" And so for me, I know that this verse was written through God gave this instruction to the Israelites through Jeremiah, okay? And it was more than about business, but it really plays an important role in my business right now because I can't control all things. But I'm learning to be better and better at trusting God and not listening to my heart, because I've made a lot of bad decisions that we would call, that was a heart decision or a gut feel. And so this is very impactful for me.
Amen.
How about you?
Yeah, I go back to a story. I had a great respect for my grandfather. My grandfather is somebody who taught me how to work hard when I was young. And he was a builder. He was a contractor. But he always was talking to me when I was a kid, and even as a teenager when I continued to work for him, is about your reputation, about your name. So I had adopted a verse a long time ago. Everybody knows it, but it's Proverbs 22:1. And it says that a good name is to be desired more than great riches. That's a super important priority for everybody to get. Because so many times as business owners, we get focused on the profit and the money and the cash flow and all the things that we have to run the business. And we forget sometimes, and we start cutting corners, and we start really taking our eye off the reputation of the business, off the reputation of our own names. If you think about it, our name was something that was given to us. You know, usually our mother or father gave us our name. It's a gift. It was given to us. So what are we going to do with that gift? Are we going to make something great of it? Make something that you can be proud of, or are you going to really mess up what your name stands for? And I've taught this lesson to my kids about our name and what we stand for the Lord. But it's important that priority is fixed and is received by everybody that's a business owner. If you do that and concentrate on the name and the reputation first, that other comes. It's amazing. The Lord pours it in, and people want to do business with a good name, and that other comes when we've got that priority in place.
Reach out to either Steve or myself. Thank you.
Happy to serve.